In this video, we're counting down the top 10 ultra-rare Washington quarters dollars. Could be worth not just hundreds, not just thousands, but even millions of dollars. That's right, some quarters look ordinary at first glance, but hidden among them are legendary rarities that collectors dream about. From shocking minting errors to rare dates with mysterious histories, these coins have shattered records at auction that could turn spare change into a small fortune. The 1979 D-era Washington quarter dollar is one of those coins that almost feels like a legend. Imagine holding in your hands what seems like just another quarter, a coin that countless people used to buy gas, groceries, or slip into an arcade machine back in the late 1970s, only to discover it's worth not just a few cents, not just a few dollars, but tens of thousands. That's the magic of this coin, and tonight we're going to dive into its incredible story. Because while most 1979 D quarters are ordinary pocket change, let's start with the world in 1979. The United States was going through tough economic times, high inflation, gasoline shortages, and a lot of uncertainty. Coins like the Washington quarter were circulating heavily. At the Denver Mint, marked with the D-Mint mark, millions upon millions of quarters were struck to meet the nation's demand for currency. These coins carried the familiar portrait of George Washington on the obverse and the eagle design on the reverse, just as they had since 1932. On the surface, nothing seemed extraordinary about these coins. They were made of the typical copper-nickel-clad composition introduced in 1965, an inner core of copper and outer layers of nickel giving them that silvery appearance. So, what makes them so valuable? For one, rarity. In coin collecting, rarity drives value more than almost anything else. When millions of coins exist in perfect, ordinary condition, they aren't exciting. But when only a handful contain an error, suddenly every collector wants one, and demand skyrockets. Among the 1979 D quarters, errors such as double dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, and wrong planchette strikes are the most famous. Each of these errors transforms the coin into something one of a kind. Another dramatic error is the off-center strike. Picture a coin where George Washington's portrait isn't neatly centered but pushed off to the side, leaving part of the planchette blank. The more dramatic the off-center, the higher the value. If you have one where the date is still visible and the strike is 50% off, you could be looking at thousands of dollars. Sometimes up to $10,000 or more just for this error alone. But the real heavy hitters, the ones that reach into that $32,000 to $40,000 range, are coins struck on the wrong planchette. Imagine a quarter that was never meant to be. Instead of being struck on a copper-nickel quarter blank, it was struck on a dime planchette, or even more incredible, on a planchette meant for a foreign coin. These wrong planchette errors are so rare that when they surface, collectors go wild. In auctions, they have fetched those astonishing five-figure sums, making them the ultimate prizes for error hunters. Let's not forget about condition. Even among rare errors, condition plays a massive role. A coin graded by PCGS or NGC in mint state condition will always bring a higher price than one that's worn from circulation. A 1979 D-era quarter in mint state with sharp details and a dramatic error is the kind of coin that can hit that $32,000 to $40,000 range we're talking about. Collectors are willing to pay a premium for a coin that not only has the error but also has survived in pristine condition for over decades. Auction records prove the incredible value of these coins. A spectacular 1979 D quarter with a major wrong planchette error sold for over $35,000 at auction. Another with a dramatic off-center strike combined with full mint luster fetched close to $32,000. And in private sales, some collectors have paid up to $40,000 for the most eye-popping examples. These aren't just coins, they're pieces of history, factory mistakes that turned into rare treasures. Yes, you heard that right, a single 1992 D-era Washington quarter dollar has shocked collectors and dealers by reaching jaw-dropping values that's life-changing money for what looks like just pocket change. This is not just an ordinary coin, it's a story of rarity, mystery, minting mistakes, and the kind of thrill that keeps treasure hunters and coin collectors searching through rolls of quarters to this day. Stick with me because by the end of this video, exciting coins in modern American numismatics and why you should keep your eyes every time you come across one. The Washington quarter itself has a long and proud history. First struck in 1932 to celebrate the bicentennial of George Washington's birth, it quickly became one of the most recognizable coins in U.S. history. For decades, the design featuring Washington's portrait on the obverse and a heraldic eagle on the reverse remained unchanged until the mint started introducing new designs in the late 20th century. But the 1992 D Washington quarter stands at a very strange crossroads in this history. It was part of the regular production run in Denver, yet certain mistakes during minting created error varieties that make this year's coin especially valuable. What was meant to be just another common quarter in the early 1990s became an accidental treasure for a lucky few. The history of how this error came to be is still debated among collectors. Some believe it was simply a mix-up at the mint, where proof dies meant for special collector coins were accidentally used to strike regular circulation quarters. Others think it might have been intentional, either as a test strike or even as an inside job by mint employees. Regardless of how it happened, the end result was a modern coin rarity that collectors can't get enough of. Just knowing that there are only a few of these out there creates a rush of adrenaline for anyone searching through their change. It's the modern-day version of a treasure map. Let's talk about value, because this is where things get even more unbelievable. Regular 1990 to D Washington quarters are worth face value if circulated, and maybe $1 or $2 in pristine mint state condition. But when you add the error factor, the close AM, or other rare varieties, suddenly the value skyrockets. At auction, one of these 1990 to D era Washington quarters sold for over $80,000, stunning the coin collecting world. Prices have since ranged between $81,000 and $84,000 depending on condition, with experts predicting that if a flawless, top-graded example comes to market, it could easily push the $90,000 mark or beyond. That means a coin you might overlook in your change could actually be worth more than a luxury car, more than a down payment on a house, and for some people, more than an entire year's salary. For the 1990 to D era Washington quarter dollar, condition is everything. A heavily circulated coin with a close AM error might still fetch tens of thousands of dollars, but if you find one in uncirculated or near-perfect condition, the value multiplies dramatically. Grading companies like PCGS and NGC have authenticated and graded some of these coins, and once encapsulated in their holders, the value is locked in as an undeniable piece of numismatic history. Collectors and investors alike are willing to pay top dollar for such guaranteed authenticity. Imagine walking into your local grocery store, pulling some change out of your pocket, and unknowingly handing over a small piece of history worth more than that. Might sound impossible, but for collectors, the 1980 for D era Washington quarter dollar proves that this exact scenario isn't just a fantasy, it's real. Some of these rare coins have been discovered in circulation, casually mixed in with ordinary quarters, only to later stun the numismatic world by selling for jaw-dropping amounts. Now think about that for a moment, a coin that originally had a face value. The 1980 for D era Washington quarter dollar was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest U.S. mints during the 1980s. Millions upon millions of quarters rolled off the presses in 1984, and most of them were perfectly ordinary. They carried the same familiar design we've seen for decades. George Washington's bust on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan, and the eagle with outstretched wings on the reverse. At first glance, the 1980 for Denver quarter doesn't look much different from the rest. But here's the secret: a handful of coins struck that year and Denver carried major mistakes. The kind of dramatic minting errors that transform a simple coin into a prize worth tens of thousands. But what really stuns collectors is not just the errors themselves, but the prices they bring. Consider this: in recent years, examples of the 1980 for D era Washington quarter dollar in pristine mint condition, showcasing dramatic doubling or off-center strikes, have brought prices soaring past $60,000. Some auction results stunned the collecting world when bids crossed $63,000 and even nudged toward the $67,000 mark. For a coin that most people think of as nothing more than pocket change, those numbers are almost hard to believe, but they're real. And the rarity of these pieces means prices are unlikely to drop anytime soon. Auction houses and grading services also play a crucial role in shaping the legend of the 1980 for D era Washington quarter dollar. When major auction houses like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers list one of these coins, the collecting world takes notice. The publicity around such sales often drives prices even higher, as eager collectors battle it out for ownership of a coin that only a handful of people in the world will ever possess. Grading companies like PCGS and NGC authenticate and certify these coins, giving buyers the confidence to pay such staggering amounts. A high-grade certified example with dramatic doubling or off-center error is the perfect storm that pushes bids into the stratosphere. One of the most talked-about examples came to light when a pristine 1980 for D era Washington quarter dollar with dramatic doubling on Washington's face crossed the auction block. Collectors couldn't believe their eyes when the hammer fell for over $60,000. That sale sent shockwaves through the hobby, sparking renewed interest in error quarters from the 1980s, and the ripple effects are still felt today as collectors continue to comb through their coins, hoping to find the next big discovery. Think about it: what makes the 1980 for D era Washington quarter dollar so electrifying is not just its rarity or its value, but its symbolism. It represents the idea that even in the modern age, where we think every detail is controlled and perfect, mistakes still slip through. Those mistakes, when preserved in the form of a coin, become treasures of history, reminders of the human element behind minting. They remind us that sometimes imperfection is far more valuable than perfection. The elusive pieces and stories circulate of lucky individuals stumbling upon one in an old jar of coins or a forgotten roll from the bank. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1966 era Washington quarter dollar, one of the most fascinating and valuable quarters of the mid-20th century. And believe me, you'll want to stick around until the end because the value of these rare errors will absolutely shock you. The year 1966 was a turbulent time for U.S. coinage. Just 1 year prior, in 1965, the United States Mint made a massive change to the nation's coins. Silver had been rising in value, and the cost of producing silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars was quickly outpacing their face value. To fix this, the mint removed silver from quarters and dimes entirely, replacing it with a copper-nickel-clad composition that's still used today. That's right, 1965 marked the first year that Washington quarters were no longer struck in 90% silver. Instead, the new clad quarters featured a pure copper core sandwiched between two layers of nickel, giving them a silvery appearance but without the intrinsic value of silver. By 1966, this transition was in full swing, and the mint was under enormous pressure to strike millions of these new clad quarters. One of the most dramatic 1966-era Washington quarters is the wrong planchet strike. Imagine a 1966 quarter struck on a leftover silver planchet from 1964. At first glance, it might look just like a normal quarter, but when weighed, the difference is obvious. A clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams, while a silver planchet quarter weighs 6.25 grams. This kind of mistake would only have happened in rare cases when leftover silver plankets remained in the machinery during the changeover period. If you happen to find one, you're holding a coin worth well over $10,000, and in pristine condition. Some examples have sold for over $19,000 or even pushing into the $24,000 to $28,000 range. But wrong plankets are just the beginning. Another class of highly collectible 1966-era quarters involves dramatic off-center strikes. Picture a quarter where George Washington's portrait is shifted dramatically to the side, leaving a blank crescent of metal visible on one edge. Off-center errors occur when the blank planchet isn't properly aligned with the dies. The more dramatic the off-center strike, say, 50% or more, the more valuable the coin becomes. A 1966 quarter with a major off-center strike can easily be worth hundreds, but when combined with high-grade preservation and dramatic eye appeal, prices soar into the thousands. Auction records help us see just how wild the values can be. In several major numismatic auctions, 1966-era quarters in exceptional grades have shocked bidders and collectors alike. For example, an extremely rare 1966 quarter error sold for close to $19,000, and another even exceeded $24,000, some of the most unique specimens. Combining dramatic errors like multiple strikes or silver transitional plankets have been appraised and valued as high as $28,000. These figures show that the market for these coins is strong, with collectors eager to pay top dollar for true rarities. Grading is also critical when it comes to value. A circulated 1966-era quarter may still be worth hundreds, but in uncirculated or mint state grades, the value multiplies dramatically. Coins graded by PCGS or NGC as MS65 or higher can easily reach into the tens of thousands. For rare transitional silver planchet errors, even circulated examples can break into five figures, while pristine mint state coins approach the $28,000 mark. The 1980 Washington quarter dollar, with rare errors and varieties so extraordinary that some have reached jaw-dropping auction results in the range, and in some cases, even climbing as high as for a coin that most of us grew up spending on gumballs, sodas, or parking meters. This discovery is almost unbelievable, but the truth is these coins exist, and their rarity has turned ordinary quarters into hidden treasures. The 1980 Washington quarter dollar might look like any other piece of change at first glance, minted in Denver. The coin carries the iconic image of George Washington on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan, paired with a heraldic eagle on the reverse. By 1980, the Washington quarter had already been a part of American life for nearly 50 years. But what makes this specific year and mint mark so fascinating is not its general mintage, which numbered in the hundreds of millions, but the rare errors and exceptional conditions that slipped through the cracks. It is those mistakes and those pristine survivors that have captivated collectors, sending prices skyrocketing into tens of thousands of dollars. Now, here's where things get exciting. Ordinary circulated 1980 Washington quarters are usually worth face value. In uncirculated condition, maybe a few dollars. But rare errors and extremely high-grade examples are where the story changes dramatically. Imagine a flawless gem-quality specimen graded MS67 or higher by PCGS or NGC. These coins are incredibly scarce because most 1980 quarters entered circulation immediately and saw heavy use. Finding one in pristine condition is like finding a needle in a haystack. Collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums to secure these pieces, with some sales reaching the $10,000 to $15,000 range just for top pop coins without major errors. Off-center errors are another major factor. A 1980 Washington quarter dollar struck 50% off-center with the full date and mint mark visible is not just rare, it's spectacular. Collectors love dramatic misstrikes because they make the coin instantly recognizable as an error, even to someone with no numismatic background. Coins like these have sold for thousands, and when paired with top preservation and collector demand, some have pushed toward five figures. Perhaps the most exciting cases involve wrong planchet errors. In the chaos of mass production, sometimes quarter designs were mistakenly struck on plankets meant for other denominations like dimes, nickels, or even foreign coins. These pieces are incredibly rare and highly desirable. For example, a 1980 Washington quarter dollar struck on a smaller dime planchet could fetch well over $10,000. But the rarest and most dramatic wrong planchet errors, like those struck on leftover silver or other unusual metals, are the ones that push values into astronomical ranges of $44,000, $47,000, or even that headline making $53,000. When one of these shows up at auction, collectors know it may be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to add such a treasure to their collection. Auction records tell some of the best stories. Collectors have been shocked to see bidding wars erupt over these coins. One particularly rare error specimen of the 1980 Washington quarter dollar stunned the numismatic world. When it crossed the auction block for over $44,000, another example pushed past $47,000, leaving bidders shaking their heads in disbelief. And the headline-grabbing sale that soared to around $53,000 cemented this coin's reputation as one of the most lucrative modern quarter discoveries. For a piece of pocket change minted less than 50 years ago, this kind of value is astonishing. Today, we're diving deep into the mysterious and fascinating world of the 1965-era Washington quarter dollar. And trust me, you'll want to stick with me until the very end, because the truth about these coins and the shocking prices they've reached at auction will absolutely blow your mind. Now, let's rewind the clock back to the mid-1960s. The year was 1965, and America was in a period of huge change. Lyndon B. Johnson was president, the Vietnam War was escalating, and the country was in the middle of one of the most turbulent decades in modern history. But for coin collectors and everyday Americans, 1965 marked a massive turning point in the way our coins were made. Up until that year, quarters, dimes, and half dollars were all struck in 90% silver. But because silver prices were rising sharply, the U.S. Mint made the dramatic decision to remove silver from circulating coins. Now, here's where things get thrilling. One of these rare 1965 silver-era quarters once sold at auction for more than $7,000, another example brought in an incredible $8,000, and yet another, in stunning condition, skyrocketed all the way up to more than $14,000, but the crown jewel. A high-grade specimen of the 1965 Washington quarter struck on a silver planchet was auctioned for a jaw-dropping $17,000. Imagine that $17,000 for a single quarter. A coin worth 25 cents when it left the mint, now valued higher than a Rolex watch or a luxury vacation. That's the magic of coin collecting. But silver planchet errors weren't the only mistakes made with the 1965 Washington quarter. Collectors have also uncovered quarters from that year struck on dime plankets. Yes, that's right, a quarter design accidentally pressed onto a smaller dime blank. The result is a coin that looks undersized, with parts of the design cut off at the edges, and these coins are extremely collectible. Then there are off-center strikes, double strikes, and even quarters struck on foreign plankets that were being used in mint production for overseas coinage. Each of these error types adds layers to the mystery of the 1965 quarter and makes collectors' hearts race when one surfaces at auction. Think about the chaos at the mint during that time. The transition from silver to clad wasn't smooth. Millions of coins had to be struck in a new metal composition, while leftover silver plankets from 1964 were still being fed into presses by accident. Mint workers probably had no idea at the time that their oversight would create one of the most sought-after modern coin errors in U.S. history, and it's not just collectors today who appreciate the drama of this moment. Auction houses and grading companies like PCGS and NGC consider these 1965 era quarters among the holy grails of modern coinage. Then check the edge. A true silver quarter will have a solid, uniform silver color along the edge, while the common clad quarters reveal that copper stripe. And of course, the condition of the coin matters tremendously. A coin in pristine, uncirculated condition will always fetch more than a heavily worn example. That's how some 1965-era quarters jumped from a few $1,000s in value to well over $14,000 or even $17,000. The 1988 D-era Washington quarter dollar. Yes, you heard that right. A single quarter worth only 25 cents at face value can be worth more than a brand new luxury car. And the story of why this coin is so valuable will absolutely blow your mind. If you're watching this video right now, don't go anywhere, because by the time we're done, you'll know exactly why the 1988 D-era quarter has become the ultimate hidden treasure in the world of coin collecting. Let's take a step back. The year is 1988. The U.S. Mint in Denver is producing Washington quarters as part of its regular output. Nothing unusual about that. The design of the Washington quarter had already been in place since 1932, honoring George Washington with his profile on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. Millions upon millions were struck, and yet, in the middle of this ordinary production year, something extraordinary slipped through the cracks. Minting errors, those accidents that happen when dies clash, when plankets are off, when misalignments occur, began to appear on some of these quarters. And among them, the 1988 D stands out like a diamond in the rough. Now, here's what makes these error quarters so intriguing. Some 1988 D Washington quarters display double dies where the details of Washington's profile, the inscriptions like in or even the date itself, appear doubled, almost as if the coin has a shadow. Other errors include off-center strikes where the design is shifted dramatically, leaving part of the planchet blank. Some are struck on transitional plankets where the wrong metal composition was used, creating a coin that weighs differently than it should. In the world of coin collecting, these aren't mistakes to be thrown away, they are masterpieces of rarity, created purely by chance. What makes these coins worth such astronomical sums isn't just the error itself. It's the condition and the rarity combined. A heavily circulated 1988 D-error quarter might sell for a few hundred or a few $1,000s depending on the severity of the mistake. But a gem-quality uncirculated specimen with a dramatic and visible error can fetch $70,000 to $76,000 or even upwards of $80 to a collector. Owning such a coin isn't just about the money, it's about holding a piece of history that almost shouldn't exist. Now, why does the 1988 D quarter command such higher values compared to other error quarters? The answer lies in timing and scarcity. The late 1980s were not known for dramatic coin errors, and the mint had already improved its quality control systems compared to earlier decades. That means errors from 1988 are much rarer than those from the 1960s or 1970s. Combine that with the fact that collectors in the 1980s weren't as focused on modern error coins as they are today, and you have a recipe for extreme scarcity. Very few were saved, and even fewer survived in high grade. Collectors today will pay almost any price to secure such a rarity. That's why auction records keep climbing. What might have been a $10,000 coin 20 years ago can now be worth $70,000 or more. And as demand increases while supply remains fixed, we could see future prices push even higher. It's not impossible that one day, a 1988 D-error quarter could cross the $80,000 threshold.